I write a column for the Athletic Business Journal, and I wrote one a few columns ago called Feel versus Real. And the whole premise of the article was when you base decisions on real, which means your data, you make better decisions than feel. But oftentimes we make a decision because we feel like it's the right thing to do. We think it's the right thing to do. But when you're able to really leverage data, and not just data, but the correct data, you're able to make much more strategic and better decisions. So you're going to get a lot of from these two gentlemen who will be running this show. We have Nick Hahn, who is the VP of Product at ASF and Club OS. And we have Bryan O'Rourke, who does everything. He runs the Fitness Industry Technology Council and 14 other companies and a little bit of everything. But you've got two very well-versed professionals who are going to share a lot of great information with you. So enjoy.
Thanks, Chris. Give it up, everybody. Great to see everybody. Thanks for coming. You have a lot of choices of events to attend, so it's a great honor to see so many smiling, wonderful faces. Before we get into this, you may have seen the presentations. We're doing a webinar series. We've done 2 of them, and then another one with Paul Bedford here in a couple weeks, and then finally with execution engines. And basically, why this is important in the realm of data is today, as I've been talking about for the last several years, pre-pandemic as well, is how do you look at strategy? How do you compete in today's world? And our view is it's the money principle, which is a combination of mindset, user experience, economics, new economics, and what we term execution engines. How do you make it work? Like, what are the engines of execution? And that's what the webinar series has been focusing on, and Nick and I have done a podcast on this a number of months ago. We're going to talk about execution engines as they pertain to data. So, people have thrown out the term data. Oh, data, data. Data is the new oil, data this, data that. And, in the real world, right, I have a lot of businesses, health clubs, other companies. We use data. It's just not as simple as people make it out to be sometimes. It's a lot more complicated than a lot of people make it out to be. And so we're going to talk about some of that, Nick and I. So Nick, what is really important about data?
I think like Chris mentioned, it's about actually seeing what's happening. It's easy to look around at what's happening in your clubs, but it's another thing to actually see the black and white data. The data does not necessarily mislead, as well as it can be more insightful to what's going on within the 4 walls. So that's really important. You can rely on your general managers and what they're saying, their feelings happening in the kids club or in the PT group or at point of sale. But if you don't have the hard, cold data in front of you, it's hard to make those decisions and really know how to apply your gut instincts that you have.
That's exactly right. And to kind of put this in context, the other thing about data as we get through this that we have to realize is that it's a component of an interrelated series of things that you can't do one without the others. Like, you really can't leverage data as well if you don't have certain platforms. You really can't leverage data as well if you're not applying it to your specific user experience. So we're focusing on data, but you have to keep that contextual, and it is a journey to achieve. There are some obstacles though, right, Nick? I mean, there are a lot of obstacles for people in how they use data. You want to talk about a few of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the primary things is making sure you have all of your data in one place, right? It's all your different systems. Everyone has 10, 15 different software platforms that are involved in everything from marketing, sales, all the way through the member journey and the member experience, your apps. Making sure that all that data really is coming together so you can see it in one place. Being able to view your data across different locations or regions. So once you get to a certain size, one little report's not going to be enough anymore to see the scale of your data. Being able to group your data by those regions and having regions not just be physical, but also by maturity of your clubs, right? So if you've just opened a new club in the last year, you want to segment them separately from clubs that have been open longer, maybe 2 or 3 years. And you want to be looking at the data and comparing them differently because they're going to be at different maturity stages with their membership cycles. And then really knowing what to do with it. It's one thing to see the data, but it's another thing to know how to use that data to know what to do with it. And that's where we're going to talk through today a couple examples of things we've learned with our customers that are great areas to look at the data to make different decisions on how to operate your business.
Yeah, and there are many other challenges. We're not going to get into all of them, but I think many of you know them. As Nick was mentioning, one of the common challenges you see is a lot of clubs and businesses in general in fitness, they are using 12 different SaaS solutions, for example. They may be using 8, they may be using 15. Not all the APIs are that smooth and well integrated, so it's very clunky from a user perspective. It makes it more challenging to really leverage your data because there's not a kind of single source of truth that's easy to understand. Now, we're going to go through these things, by the way, and Nick's going to show you some examples of analytics and the like, but we really want to get to Q&A. So, as we go through this, make mental notes so we can talk about the real world as it pertains to leveraging data.
And Bryan, actually, before you move on,
Yeah, please.
One last thing is, I think that's where there's definitely the need to have some kind of open standard for sharing data across all the different platforms, because having 12 platforms that are all looking at the data in their own way and having their own viewpoint of what a member looks like is not helpful for the consumers and the clubs, right?
Exactly.
We need open standards like other industries, like the health insurance industry has rolled out.
Yes, and Nick has a background in that industry as well, so I know that's very near and dear. Do you want to walk through these with the clicker, some of the analytics stuff
Absolutely.
that we looked at? Because we're going to go through some useful examples of analytics with data here with Nick.
Awesome, cool. I will do that. Hey, it worked. All right. So I'm going to start at the top of the funnel and work my way down. Questions that we really challenge our customers to think about. So just even starting with your leads, right? Where are your leads coming from? That seems easy, but getting to the right level of attribution. What marketing source? Are they coming from outreach events? Are you the type of club that has outreach events? And then more importantly, if you have outreach events, which outreach event did the lead come from? And then from there, you're going to want to not just look at the number of leads that came in, but you're going to want to look at what happened. And what happened with the lead is not always conversions. Sometimes the purpose of a lead is not to convert them, it's to get them into your physical location to experience your gym. And then it's the sales team's job to convert from there. So depending on the event, depending on the marketing source, there's going to be different outcomes that you're looking for. And you really need to segment your data so that you're looking at the right outcomes for the right type of input.
Yeah, Nick, I want to mention this. Chris Smith and I were talking about this briefly. Sorry, Chris, to mention your name here. Thanks for being here, my friend. We're talking about this as it relates to attribution. So don't believe Google Analytics altogether. Attribution is getting more and more challenging. And you need to really understand the dynamics of attribution because people, right, Nick, you can make some conclusions that aren't really full-blown. There's some recent articles that can show variation on analytics by as much as 30 or 40% between platforms. There's a lot of null sets that are being attributed where the Google doesn't really even know where the source of that attribution is. And it's very important to understand these things for the purposes that Nick outlined. So keep that in mind.
It's also the virtual and physical divide, right?
Yep.
Because someone might have driven past your location, then done a Google search for you. That doesn't necessarily mean that your Google ad spend is what is helping. It could be your awesome signage on the street. So you need to be able to look at everything. And you're looking for trends, not for the one single thing that's going to change your business.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind here is, what's happening in privacy. So when you see what has happened with Apple's recent iOS 15, when people talk about EINs and identifying cell phones in certain geofenced areas and all that, just be mindful. It is not as simple as people might make it sound like it is. And it's comparison over time, right, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, trending over time, making sure that things are going in the right direction. Just because 1 month, one source dropped does not mean you should be abandoning it, right? Sometimes the leads take more than a month to convert,
That's right.
For example, also. An outreach event, those leads are not necessarily, they were at the mall. They weren't intending on joining a gym. So looking and judging the conversion of that outreach event over a 1 month period of time is not enough time for that lead to mature through the phases.
That's right.
All right, cool. Another area that we like focusing on is that initial contact, especially when it comes to web leads. It is a competitive world out there, and the attention span of millennials and Gen Z is short. I don't know how I focused enough to be here today, right? It's tough. We like to make sure, depending on the type of club you are, there's a couple different strategies on how you want that first outreach to be. If someone has logged, submitted a guest pass from your website, from their mobile phone, you want to make sure that you're texting them back, because they probably didn't want to talk to someone, so why are you making a phone call to them? They want to see an automatic text message. But you want to hide the text message so that it seems like it came from a person. Like, hey, this is Nick from my club. I saw that you submitted your lead. That's where it's dangerous to have that automatic email or text that goes out immediately as soon as that lead's created. I like, give it a 7-minute delay. Just feels human enough that, oh, maybe Nick is actually looking at this. It could actually really be him.
Good tip.
Just enough.
Good tip.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. However, you want to follow up with phone calls still. If they don't respond, you potentially want to outreach them. So really being able to track where that is important, especially when it comes to the web leads.
Yep.
Another area is just looking at your overall, all of your sales follow-ups that you're performing, or that your team's performing, and making sure that the sales staff is actually doing what they're saying. So you can sit up in your meeting with your sales staff and say, hey, I want you guys to be making phone calls and texting. But then when you go look at the system, what I see very often is, wow, the staff just 90% emails, right? Here's a great example. 70% of the follow-ups emails. That's the last median that you want to be going to communicate with a lead. You want to try phone calls, you want to text, you only want to be emailing them if they opted out of text messaging, because then you're just getting lost with all the other email marketing that they're getting. Now, do email marketing, but we're talking about that initial follow-up for that first 7 days, for example. You're competing, they're interested in joining the gym, you're competing for their attention quickly. Getting lost in their updates or promotions folder in Gmail is not gonna do it. That's how you keep them warm later on.
Yeah, and in the context of data too, think of what, why, and when and how. So great point on when. And this is the point of user experience and the money principle I outlined at the beginning, where use user experience. When you're intentional about delaying the text to make it seem more human, that's a design component of UX.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing that we've also found with the data of our customers is that phone calls after a lead's about a month old, very, very small conversion rate. It's just no one's answering the phone at that point. They've probably blocked you. They've seen your number call a couple times. They've already hung up on your salesperson. If they haven't answered in that first 7 to 14 days, it's no longer time to be making phone calls to them. You're just wasting staff's time. That's where you go to the lower cost marketing efforts, the blast text messages, the blast emails. That's when that's more effective, because then it's a lower cost. You're already, I thought about joining a month ago. My life's moved on. I'm not, I don't feel bad like I did after that weekend when I submitted that information. So it's a different mindset at that point.
That's right.
So then once they're members, being able to track your revenue and comparing the locations across themselves and making sure you're looking at your revenue, how it's tracking to the previous month. So an example here is the orange line is October, green is the previous month, so September, and then blue is the previous year. So you want to be looking at the previous month and the previous October in this example to really see how your revenue sources are tracking and be able to dig down per different membership type, per sources. So being able to actually track where did those memberships come from, which membership offers are leading to the memberships that are helping build your business.
Exactly. Keep going.
Another area that I like doing is location competitions, right? A lot of people in fitness are competitive, so any time that you can compete, have locations compete against themselves, it's fun. The general managers or location managers absolutely love it on everything, even from the number of phone calls being made, right? So being able to track the revenues across the locations and tracking which locations or region of locations make up the majority of your revenue is important to be able to see right within your software.
Exactly.
So that's the good high-level information, but then you want to be able to dig down into it. And you need to be able to dig down into it. And you don't want to be spending all your day in Excel. How many, show of hands, how many of you have someone who's dedicated to pulling a weekly Excel spreadsheet for you on your membership and revenue numbers? Yeah, it's a little absurd at this point. Although I used to work for a top 10 Fortune 500 company, and their entire budgets were built with Excel. So I guess it's possible, but I don't know if you'd really want to do it that way. But taking a track of all your different sources of revenue. So where is your revenue coming from? Is it coming from your dues? What percentage is coming from your add-ons, your point of sale transactions? And then being able to dig into which point of sale transactions, for example, are working the best. So you might see that your smoothies have dropped off. Your smoothies aren't as successful as they used to be. That's when you can pair that with a good marketing automation tool to start targeting, hey, after a class, let's give everyone who attended our spin class a free smoothie. Get them hooked into the repetitiveness of, I go to spin, I get a smoothie, I go to spin, I get a smoothie, kind of almost that reward cycle, but obviously a healthy smoothie, right? But those are the kind of behaviors and patterns you want to be able to make with your consumers, and being able to track into which ones are doing well. Tracking into, are there correlations between certain classes and certain products that are selling better? Being able to actually see that information will help you fine-tune the business and the revenue streams.
Exactly, and this is one example in membership. Obviously, everyone's familiar with personas and the different kind of personas, and tying behavior to those personas through the user experience and understanding how those are monetized and the lifetime value of all those. So not on just on the front end, on the mid-size, on the back end, these are all just examples of how you can use data to figure out how to operate your business more successfully, more efficiently.
Looking at your, I think everyone, all the customers I talk to are always looking at the membership units and the membership revenue, and I think looking at them together is always absolutely important. Being able to track seeing the difference in the different types, and again, tying it back to the attribution of where those leads came from as you're going. Diving in even deeper into your add-ons, for example. So one of the things we really encourage our customers to do is to make sure each type of package that you're selling for an add-on, be it 30-minute PT, that's monthly or weekly, right? You want to have both, and you want to A/B test offers to your members and see which is working better. So for example, for this customer, their 30-minute weekly PT is actually working significantly better for them than a monthly package. They're getting a significant amount more revenue. Now, could it be because of the marketing of, it's only $100 a month versus $400, or sorry, is it $100 a week versus $400 a month? There is some psychology there, but by being able to configure your member management system so that you can see those different groups, it does allow you to actually look at the data and see the cold hard data of which offers are increasing our revenue the most.
Yeah, and conversion being a big thing to test, but also not looking just at conversion there, is looking post-sale to figure out any correlations between lifetime value of client and what those actions were, so you can figure out what your cherry customers, who they are.
Yeah, and just also being able to look at your the services that you offer. Like, is childcare actually pulling its weight? Is it something that is actually valuable to your member base? Just because your competitors have it doesn't mean you should have it.
What we covered today in the keynote about zombie activities. You remember that?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that we do that is just a waste of our time, and we never really sit back and think about what we need to be eliminating. So this is not just about using data to optimize what's good. It's about using data to get rid of what doesn't matter or is actually counterproductive.
Right, I think locker rentals is a good one that at some clubs it doesn't necessarily make sense. You're upside down. You're spending more time dealing with the dissatisfaction of, I forgot my code. Can you unlock my locker? I forgot something. It just might not be worthwhile. And yeah, the zombies this morning, that definitely resonated with me. I see that a lot. It's like, well, we've always done that. Well, that was before. This is the now. COVID changed things. Yeah. And we need to be even more lean than we were before.
That's right.
I've seen a bunch of different spreadsheets from a lot of customers on how they track their net memberships, right? And being able to, I'm a very visual learner. I need visuals to understand what's going on. And being able to actually put everything in a chart, your net memberships in a single place, I think is important. We love this dashboard that we have. It's been a huge hit. Being able to see the net new memberships compared to the cancellations, expirations, returns, and then being able to see the net memberships. You can look at this by day, you can look at this by week. A lot of our operators really get down into the day level detail of looking at this data to see any trends and be able to stop it and reverse course as soon as possible. And then of course, attribution is always important, and tying it back to what offers led to the changes in the joins. For example, you might find that one of your offers that you ran, maybe you had a $0 promotion 3 months ago, but you're seeing that a lot of those members are churning out a lot faster, and all of a sudden you're starting to go the wrong direction in those. Maybe you need to reach out to those and engage with those members because they joined for the wrong reasons, but now you need to engage with them to help them understand another value that your club might be offering that they just haven't taken advantage of.
That's right.
And then of course, being able to dissect all your memberships, all the sources, all that stuff by demographic information, I think is really important. What genders, ages are being attracted to the offers that you're putting in place. Being able to see the breakdown of demographics. So your family memberships, what age ranges are those? That helps you tailor your marketing messaging so you can confirm. And again, we feel like we know what age groups we should be marketing to, but do we actually know which specific membership offer is best for which demographic? Even male versus female, right? If you're sending an email to a male, they might not care about childcare as much as a female might. It's just, those are things that they don't necessarily consider as much. So those are important things to be factoring in to see for the different services that you offer, what the demographics are. That way you can really customize your marketing messaging and your sales team and coach your sales team on how to actually talk to those prospects when they come in. That way there's a more personal experience. Yep. Defining those personas of who comes to your gym and how you're getting them to the gym, I think is extremely important.
Yeah, and don't make it overly complicated. If you have more than 5 or 6 personas, you're going too far, and especially in the beginning. You don't want to have but a handful. That's where you can kind of suffer from paralysis by analysis. So keep it simple.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the future. So how many people are using dashboards like this to operate their business? A few, yeah, good. And so where this is going, and you know, it's such a broad topic, it's difficult to, because there's a lot of different users with different perspectives. How many people are using workflows actively with lead gen? Yeah, of course, Chris, I know a number of people in here do it. So, you know, this is really, as we looked at execution engines that we alluded to before, and we're going to get into Q&A just in a couple minutes, you know, this is going to be the thing that's going to start separating people that can operate profitably and successfully and those that are going to struggle. Because once you have clean data, you have some basics like personas defined, you understand the user experience you're creating in the basic customer journey, you figured out your core attribution, you understand your best cherry customers, 20% of them generating 80% of your profit in general, Pareto. Once you start understanding that and you have systems that work together on an enterprise basis, then you can start proceeding to more and more intelligent automation of effort. And that's really going to separate folks. And if you think about the most successful operators in any business today, it's going to be the ones that blend very high touch points of human contact with high degrees of automation that's very personal. So if you're coming in there, I'm not getting generic email or text communication talking about childcare because I don't fit that bill or whatever it might be. Automation is really the next kind of era of what data is going to enable, one of those eras outside of the insights, et cetera. But automation is really going to be a big deal to drive down labor cost and to increase revenue per client and the lifetime value as well as ancillary revenues. This is not a little thing. It's a massive competitive dynamic that is really going to separate players in the marketplace going forward. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I think there's a couple aspects. So one, it's interesting is that fitness is one of the last industries to go through the data revolution. And I think what's also important to keep in mind is that this is your data, right? It's not your member management system's data. It is your data on your members. It's important that you can look at the insights you want to get out of it. That's what, and how can you get your data to work for you? That's what it all comes down to at the end of the day.
Yeah, which leads us to a segue. If you want to click the thing again, let's talk about Q&A. So this is the best part, especially considering the fact that we have people from 4 countries around the world listening in with you. So Chris, are you around with a microphone? We would love you to ask questions. What are your challenges? What is it that you want to know about data and your plans to leverage it? What are the challenges that you're having that we could discuss and answer? Who wants to volunteer to be the first guinea pig in the Q&A?
It will be painless, we promise.
Come on.
Don't be shy.
You, please, what's your name?
Kay Applin.
Kay, of course. I know who you are, Kay.
Thank you.
But I wanted you to say it for the audience.
Yes, Kay Applin, Lake Jackson, Texas, Family Fitness. IHRSA member for 30 years.
The Kay Applin.
Here's my issue.
Yep.
I used to get things generated to me from certain other managers that worked for me in the past. And it all I know comes out of all of the systems that I had, but all of a sudden, when the pandemic came, everything changed, and I don't know how to bundle it again. I don't know how to get the reports that I want, and maybe should educate my managers, myself. I'm looking for ideas.
Did you have a lot of staff turnover during the pandemic?
Of course.
Yeah, so my guess is a lot of those reports were very handcrafted and manually created by the people that they probably spent. Yeah, so you've heard that.
I asked, and she said, I've never done that.
Yeah.
And so what I'm looking for is a way, I know what I'm missing. As we grow back into our market share, I'm interested in knowing exactly who's there and why. And we are a huge kids club. I mean, we have 68% families, and we are bilingual in our area. So those are such avenues to go down that makes people want to come to the club. I don't know how to grab everything together and to produce data for me to make decisions.
Well, the first thing you probably need to do, Kay, as you know, is start with, what you have available. And I don't want to name vendors or anything, but, it's basically the baseline of reporting that you're getting currently and then what your ideal state is. And there's a set of certain basic information, right, Nick, that you're going to need to get. So I would start there. Like, what are you getting now? And what do you need? And find those gaps. That's step one. That's where I would start.
You want to make sure that as much of the data collection and presentation to you is automated, because the industry already had a lot of turnover before the pandemic, and then obviously we're in the middle of the Great Resignation, right? So it's going to keep going on for a while. Making sure those processes are automated and you're taking the human element out of it. That way, there's a lot more. Putting that onto the vendors, as a vendor, I'm scared to say this almost, but clubs to a way need to ask for more of us, especially when it comes to the data. The vendors in this industry have really been lagging behind on the data, or, it's going to be a huge consulting fee in order for us to pull that data for you together. No, it shouldn't be that complicated. If it is, they're just covering up for their own weaknesses and charging you for their own operational weaknesses. So that's not a great place to be, and that's something you want to avoid.
Yeah, but you have to start at a baseline, and you can't get ahead of that. You got to start at the baseline of what do you get, what do you need, and then, as Nick pointed out, going to your vendor and demanding that you get those basic things and start from there. That's a simple answer to your question. I'm sure it feels more complicated than that, Kay.
It does, because it seems like we've come out of all of this for 20 months, and that there's not a whole lot of, let's start over right now. We finally got some members back. Mm-hmm. Let's start over. Okay, where?
Mm-hmm. That's where you start. We just said, start with that. What are you basically getting? What do you need? demanding that you get it, and that's the starting point. Thank you, Kay. It's
Great
good to
question.
see you, by the way. Yes.
I have a question from a virtual attendee, Jose.
Hello, Jose.
How to overcome the missing data of the last 18 months? Are we seeing some change in customer segments?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's hard to compare to this time last year with your year-over-year data. We like to just say pretend last year didn't happen, and even the beginning of this year, it's going to be different. We are redefining the new normal, so relying on anything more than the last month is going to be hard. You got to be looking at week-over-week comparisons and month-over-month comparisons, because how you ran your business 18 months ago, just throw that out the window, assume you don't know anything anymore other than the things you've learned, but now you're gonna have to reapply the things you've learned in new ways. Your membership base is very likely gonna be different. You're gonna have to pivot. If you haven't already pivoted, you need to be looking at where you can pivot. You have to be finding those zombies.
And there's a lot of great information reports that are being provided through IHRSA in concert with other brands. I know Blair's here, he's done some things on this. And others where you're right, you can't really compare 2020 to 2021. You almost have to start fresh, but you can also have the benefit of relying on a lot of people that have put a lot of effort into documenting some trends that are consistent across the board, even with other countries. So pay attention to those reports. They're readily available. Google them, contact IHRSA, see what you can get. It's going to give you a very good sense of some of these dynamics.
I think it's also important to reach out to your peers that maybe aren't your competitors, but are peers in a different region, because the various regions within the country are all coming back at different paces. So one region that's 90%, if you're only at 70% of normal, call up some of those clubs, try to get onto a Rex roundtable, right? Get involved and learn more from other executives who might be further ahead in the recovery than you might be.
Yeah, thank you, Allison, for Jose's question. Thanks, Jose. Who's next?
Next question. Hey.
I have a question. This is kind of a little granular. So we are building a 22,000 square foot club in Baltimore.
Read about it.
Yeah, the mine.
Very nice.
And we are putting together our pre-sales, our workflow through One Fit Stop. We have One Fit Stop. And it's daunting because I don't know, I don't have a playbook on, we get the form, and then what does that workflow look like, from the automated email to the SMS to the phone call to the if that, then this. It's this whole animal that's so new, and it's new for all of us. So it's like, do I hire somebody that already has knowledge? One Fit Stop's giving us recommendations, but is there some kind of playbook on best practices, at least for pre-sales? And then once we open, my gosh, the workflow could be, retention and, all of it,
There's proactive and, so when you're starting out, right, there's pre-sales, there's proactive and reactive lead management. So you can buy list, you can target ads against certain groups of people, you can use certain profiling. I'm sure you might have used a Buxton or a Claritas or another form of tool to analyze your trade area, and it's going to tell you where your concentration of potential traffic is. There's a lot of consumer reports, information from IHRSA that are going to give you, these are the cohort profiles where your propensity to consume your fitness services are going to be highest. You're going to be able to, right out the box, do ads, et cetera, and then you track those as far as attribution goes. That's proactive. Another thing you can do is you can buy a list. You can do a number of things to obtain contact data, and a lot of that information can be kind of put in cohorts as well. And then you kind of light the fire with that and watch what's coming from the smoke, and then you kind of screen out what's actually working and not, as we talked about earlier, and constantly evolve that. You're going to see certain content is going to generate better returns, better ROI, better CAC, et cetera, and you just learn as you go. But you got to start there. If you've done some basic stuff, the roots, the kind of bones are there to do it. It does take a little effort. I can't get into the specifics of your lead management system, but obviously to the extent you are thoughtful in segregating some of those ads, you're going to, from the beginning, start practicing with responses and follow-up and just measure what's working better than not. You design your services to fit a certain group. Obviously, I know it's strong in group fitness, right? In a studio type concept. So, you kind of know what your customer is. And then you message accordingly, and looking at conversion. And there's a lot of standard statistics you can get on what's great as far as an ROA goes, what's great as far as a CAC goes, and then manage around that, okay? I will say this though, when it comes to that, just be mindful, because what's happening in Facebook and Google and some other platforms, it's evolving. So don't go too far afield with spending too much on those experiments. Make them very thoughtful, not overspend, see what you're getting in the way of conversion, and just constantly tweak your messaging, tweak your targeting, tweak your content to see what's working. What do you think, Nick?
With that type of facility, you also want to be careful to not go into too much automation, especially once a relationship's been established. So once you actually make contact with the person, you want to lay off on the automation, because that's when you want to be a lot more personable and talk about the conversations you've had. So that's where it is daunting, and you want to make sure that you can turn the automation off at the correct points.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. So in your financial analysis, I'm sure you know your break-even target of number of members, what is optimal, right? That's going to tell you a certain number, right? If it's 200, yeah. If it's 10,000, less, because it's a function of actually handling it, right? So keep that in mind as well. It's common sense.
Thank you, guys.
Great questions in the back. Man, we got to get the people in the back.
Chris is getting his steps in.
Yeah, quick question, and this is kind of specific, but to your point earlier about keeping all your data in one place and being able to really mine actionable insights. I feel like one of the challenges, especially for multi-location brands, is there's a wealth of data in Google My Business that really speaks to what's happening a lot relative to what we can get out of Google Analytics or Search Console or Moz or SEMrush or any of the other platforms. But it exists for a really short period of time. It's difficult to segment out what's coming from members versus non-members.
Yep.
And there aren't a lot of tools to aggregate to get high-level insights of what's going on across all these multiple locations. I was curious if you had any tips or places to kind of point us in the right direction on that.
Yeah. So, that's it can vary a lot depending on a bunch of variables. So I don't want to be too cavalier in the response. But as many of you know, and this is best practice, if you are seeking new members, you certainly want to make sure you have the population list of the members you have in Facebook, not having that content served up, right? And you can do that so that it's easier for you then to isolate what's happening with fresh new members that you're not getting bleed over, right? On the Google side and Google My Business, yeah, it's challenging. What the most challenging thing about this, you probably know, is it's changing. Like every couple weeks or months, they are changing what they're doing. So, it sounds, very generic, but pay really close attention, like you're obviously doing, to what's going on. It's surprising to me, Google My Business is not used more than it should be by a lot of operators. There's a lot of content that can be posted there. There's a lot of things that can be used for that in certain respects, but it has a lot of limitations. And this is the reality today. It's what I referred to earlier under attribution in general. These platforms give us data. That data varies between platforms as to what's really attributable and not. You can't mark with a, what did my dad say? Mark with a paintbrush, measure with a micrometer, mark with a paintbrush, and cut with an axe. That's his axiom, right? So you're not going to, take care of the 80%. You're going to lose out on some of that 20. And the way you're going to learn from it is by paying attention and tweaking to the best of your ability over time, keeping these things in mind. I wish I could give you a secret sauce, and I'm happy to talk to you about your specific situation, separately if you'd like, and maybe give you a better answer.
I have 5 minutes, so a couple more questions.
I want to thank Chris for being an excellent guy with the mic. Thank you, Chris.
I was pretty swift. It's back.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Rodriguez. I represent Self-Made Training Facility. We are a private training facility for independent contractors, personal trainers. So my question is on a smaller scale. So I started off as a trainer in the facility, but I want to be able to do some analytics for myself. If I have my clients and where I'm generating leads for myself, and that's what I'm here to do, is to help that independent contractor figure out how to scale their businesses better. What platforms for the smaller scale, for the independent contractor, would you suggest to utilize for their analytics that would be best for them, where they won't be putting out too much money to get these bigger systems for corporations or bigger gyms? What would be best for them?
Allison, was that a plant? You know, I mean, Nick?
Yeah, so we actually have a sibling company as part of our portfolio called MyPT Hub that focuses on that. And we've been working very closely with improving their offering in North America. So they kind of have a great presence in the UK and Australia. So we've been working with them and collaborating on getting a lot of these analytics that we've been talking about into their system also.
And here's the good news. SaaS models have enabled the ability to use these tools at a cheaper and cheaper price. And there are a lot of different options, whether they're even fitness industry specific or not. There are a number of very quality options, okay? And they're very affordable, depending on what you're looking to achieve. And that's why it's great you're here at this show, because if you walk the floor and you talk to the people who provide these services, I think you're gonna find a number of options. They're gonna make a heck of a lot of sense. And then you just have to make a decision and then work it. And it's just, God, what we're able to do today for the price compared to what was happening even 5 or 6 years ago is just phenomenal if you know how to use the tool. And the great news, a bunch of options, and they're getting better. You know, a lot of the underlying efforts like EverCommerce, AFS, and others, they know this is coming, like it's going to become more and more critical to your success, and they're spending a ton of money to develop the things that you're going to need at a more and more available price, because they know to compete, you've got to do this stuff. So walk the floor, ask good questions. There are a lot of great people out there that are going to be able to help you.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing to think about is that you're not going to find the one solution that's going to do 100% of your vision. You got to be looking for that 80, 90%.
That's right.
Find that software. Finding one software platform that is an all-in-one that can do everything you want, there's going to be incongruencies with how you want to run your business. Even your model compared to someone else in the same independent contractor kind of model, you're going to have slightly different needs.
Yeah, remember the zombie theme from the talk this morning. Yeah, you can't, don't try to do it all, because a lot of that you're trying to do isn't going to matter.
All right, so I think we got time for one more question. And it was close, so it worked.
My name is Andrew Nelson, and I'm here as a vendor with MX Metrics, and I have a specific question for you, Nick, because something you said really struck a chord with me, which is that the data is my data, and do with it what you want. And as a vendor, we're really struggling as there's been this new trend, particularly in MMS or software companies, to charge for that data. So it makes it really difficult for us to build those integrations, and we want to give that data and those dashboards to customers. And so I really think I'm speaking on behalf of the vendors and the customers, the club operators, when I say, is that going to change? Are we going to see a trend to more openness of data so that integration is affordable, where we can provide that without digging into our net?
Yeah, boy, this is a good question. You want to take a little bit, and I'll
take a little bit of it. So I think there's a difference between paying for the data and paying for the services that are providing the data, right? And paying for the ability to access that data rapidly, right? What the clubs pay for is access to is the web application that allows them to see their data. That's their monthly fee, right? So working with partners, and there's a certain amount of support that goes into partners, and I think it's really important that partners get the same level of support that a customer is going to get. And in order to fund that and staff that, you need to have dedicated teams that can actually be there to answer vendor questions at will and help them use the club data to get the best possible value.
Yeah, so I'm curious to get your reaction to this, because I know we're on a limited time, but so let's accept some things, all right? One thing we got to accept is more and more people are in the business of selling data, you know, and they don't. And so one thing you need to be careful of who you're really doing business with. You know, if you're not paying for something, you're the product, And you need to be aware of that. That includes Google and Facebook, who, there's a lot I could go into about the problems with those organizations who are monopolies sanctioned by the U.S. government right now to steal our money. And this is going to get worse.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, it's going to get worse, okay? So what do you do about it? I mean, I could get into a lot of details about that, but first, who are you doing business with? If their model is about giving you information for free, there's a hook, okay? The second thing, so keep that in mind. The second thing is own your own data if you can. That's why SMS is really important right now. You don't have to go through a third-party intermediary to tell you who they are. You can reach out to them directly. Own your own data. Be careful of Facebook. Be careful of relying on Facebook ads right now.
I think one other thing that a good friend of mine, Jared up here, mentioned on a recent webinar that we did was that when someone comes into a gym and says, your gym and says, $20, that's ridiculous. Why am I paying $20? You're going to give them all the reasons why $20 is worth it to them. That's what we have to consider. We can't turn around and be different about that also. Like, we have to consider what is the value we're getting out of that access.
Yeah, and it's going to become a more and more essential question, a series of questions to ask when you realize what we talked about around execution engines. Because the cost of third party is just going to get more and more expensive, so we need to keep that in mind. Well, listen, Chris, anybody else? Are we wrapping up,
No, I
friend?
think we just got the signal that we're out of time. So
Oh, man.
we can give these guys a big round of applause for some great
Thank
information.
everybody for being here. Thanks for being at IHRSA 2021.
Great question.
Awesome to see everyone. Thank you for
Enjoy
being
your
here.
next session. Make sure you come to the reception tonight and have a great time.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Chris.